YouTube, welcome to a new subscribers program review, and we're working on Claudio Martini's program today. And the specialty of this particular review is going to be that Claudio is actually 64 years old and he's still lifting, and you will see with his program in the description that he's not just doing some tricep kickbacks with pink dumbbells, he's actually doing compound movements with heavy weights. And that is, to me, extremely inspiring to see someone who is an older man who is still sticking to it with passion at this age. It's, I think, an inspiration and a hope for all of us who love that practice, because it's a sign that if we're being diligent and we're being smart with it, we can keep doing that forever. And that's great. So, I'm going to keep that in mind because, of course, being 64, his hormonal profile is not as prime, and I'm going to have to really pay attention to his frequency and volume to be able to give him something that he can actually recuperate from. Because when you're not a young whippersnapper anymore, you don't have the same recovery abilities, and that's just a fact. Does it mean that people who are going to be older than 40 suddenly need to stop doing volume and are just going to completely become decrepit? No, of course, but here he's 64, there's a difference. There's a 25-year difference. This is actually someone who could be and should be considered old. And yet, by his practice and his physical activity, he is still young. And this is the key to eternal youth, in a sense. It's always being active. I can relate that to my grandpa, who's 91, who still works in the field, who still cuts trees. The guy is still running around. He's still very active. He's more active than most people who are in their 50s in the modern world. So, jumping into that, he tells me that his lifts may seem small, but they are substantial for him. He's benching 225, he's squatting 315, and he's deadlifting 325. For someone who's 64, that is more than substantial. That's amazing. And diving into the program, you will see that it's nothing special or crazy. It's a program focused on compound movements 3 times a week. Now, for most people who are intermediate to advanced, I will start to recommend doing more than 3 times a week, but here it is, of course, justified because he needs that time in between to recuperate and recover. So I'm not going to touch that frequency, that's perfectly fine. And you will see that I'm not going to increase the volume either. I actually might decrease it. So, on Monday, Claudio does incline bench press 5x5, then a bench press 5x3, then dips 3x8, and then chins 5x5. That's a lot of volume, actually. A lot of the young lifters, natural lifters, couldn't handle that amount of pressing volume. So it shows that you have amazing shoulder health. That's really inspiring. That being said, I do think that it is a little bit much, especially since you essentially repeat the same movement pattern 3 times. I mean, incline presses are a vertical press, but then bench and dips, they essentially do the same thing. So I would say pick one or the other. Do either the bench press or the dips, and maybe up the volume. You could be doing a 5x5 on the bench instead, or a 3x8 to 12 on the dips instead, to up the volume like this. Because I do think that following those 2 movements like this is just going to decrease progression. You could also have them enter a rotation of sorts, as this would also make total sense. You could do 1 week where you do dips, 1 week where you do bench press, and that would work perfectly fine. And you open with the incline bench press, which is, if that's your strength, your lift of choice for the strength work, sure, do it. There's no problem with that. And you close with the chins, which also there is no problem with that. Now, I can't really superset anything here. Technically, if I wanted, I could superset the chins with anything else because it works antagonistic muscles, so it wouldn't damage progression or performance. But I understand that at your age, you might not want to do that. So, in a way, I would encourage you to take off of the program either bench press or dips, have them rotate, and up the volume a little bit more for the horizontal press. That's why you have a vertical press, an horizontal press, and a vertical pull, and that's a good day. For your rep ranges, you like static rep ranges, and this is where I'm going to tell you that evolving rep ranges might actually be very beneficial in your case, because you might end up doing less volume in more intense intensity windows, and it can help you because you look to be the type of person that handles intensity well, because you can do a 5x5 if you do a real 5x5. And I think that you would beneficiate from trying and actually focusing on that aspect a bit more without going crazy with the intensity range. You can still do something like for example, a 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps. It's still very similar to a 5x5, but it's going to be, for the most part and for most of the time in the schedule, below the volume of a 5x5. And that can really help you with the recovery, especially as you age. Because you might find that the more you age, the less you recover, and the more sticking to a 5x5 is not going to be realistic anymore. You will need to be able to shrink the volume down, and that can be a good way to do so. So keep that in mind and maybe apply that to also the chins. You can do that for the dips. The dips, you could do 3 to 6 to 8 reps, 3 to 6 to 10 reps if you want to have a below and above volume window, etc., etc. I see that there is a distinct lack of isolation movements on that day. I do think that you could add some curls, you could add some long head of the tricep extension, you could add some real delt isolation. It wouldn't cost you anything in terms of recovery, potentially even help with injury prevention and prehab, and also in terms of pure bodybuilding really help, because you said that lifting is your true love. I don't know if you lift for strength or for bodybuilding, but in any case, isolation movements won't hurt. Plus, it's going to open a window for you to create supersets, so it's not even going to take more time. And you will find that for the overall ability of the body to recover, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to hurt. Wednesday, you start with squats. 5x5. Squats 5x5 is a lot of volume for any flexion. Then you do side lateral, then you do stiff leg deadlifts, another 5x5, then standing calf raise, weighted 5x10, and Pendlay rows. The one rep range that I don't mind here is the 5x10 on the calves, because you don't really need to push the intensity on the calves, so it's okay if you sandbag. The volume is much more important for that body part. But for the rest, there's a lot of 5x5s, and especially on something like an upright row, again, it's amazing. You must have very strong shoulders, but you would beneficiate from maybe doing your upright rows in a 8 to 12 rep range with 3 to 4 sets, and potentially even switch the squats to something like a 5 sets of 3 to 5, anything to give you the ability to touch more intensity and sandbag less. And I'm not 64, I don't know if maybe this sandbagging tactic is a way for you to preserve yourself, and if it is, of course, don't change it. But I do think that in terms of injury prevention and allowing the body to recover from volume, there are better ways to do so than just static rep ranges. Same for the stiff leg deadlift, and I would say here in terms of exercise selection that squats plus stiff leg deadlift might be a combo that is going to be a little bit rough on the lower back. You could try and include Romanian deadlifts as a rotation in place of the stiff legs, just like you did with the dips and the bench press, and see how it feels. See if you get a good stretch, unless you're doing your stiff leg deadlift like a lot of people do, which they're really doing Romanian stiff leg deadlift while they focus on the negative, in which case it's completely different, and keep doing that if it's the case. But the stiff leg deadlift really beneficiate in the 6 to 10 rep range. The 5x5 is not really justified here. And the Pendlay row, as I explained, is the same thing. Yeah, Pendlay row really is going to be something where if you can get a 5x5, I guarantee you're really sandbagging hard on the first few sets, because it's one of those lifts that once the ability to pull is gone, you're going to pull with your legs a ton. And again, the Pendlay row is taxing on the lower back, especially after squats and stiff legs. So assess the situation, but if you have recurrent lower back pain, you might want to replace the Pendlay rows with something that also taxes the upper back but doesn't tax the lower back. So ring rows, some type of seal rows, etc. All of these would be very good. Maybe some dumbbell rows that also don't tax the lower back as well. These would be beneficial as well. Plus, the Pendlay row is a positive only. If you do the stiff leg deadlift properly, it's a positive only. You're lacking stretching movements. So have one or the other do that for you. Either Romanian deadlifts or dumbbell rows. Friday, standing press 8 by 4. So in this case, since with the way I look at your program, I'm just assuming it's 8 sets of 4 reps, which is a little bit strange. I'm supposing it's that, and unless it was a typo, I don't really get the logic behind that, especially since it's such a big change from your usual 5x5s. So explain to me, Claudio, if you're in the comments, I will pin your comment. Not sure. I don't want to touch it because there must be a reason here, but I would say that doing something like 3 sets of 6 to 10 or something like this would be better than just repeating, because this is like, repeating sets like this for bodybuilding, it's a lot of sandbagging. Then you do side lateral raises, 5 sets of 8, so you do a lot of work for the shoulders. You have a very strong shoulder focus. Then you do lying triceps, 5x5. For isolation movement, I don't recommend 5x5s. Then barbell curls, 5x5, same logic. Lots of sandbagging again. And then hammer curls, 5x8, which, again, it's a lot of what some would call junk volume in this case. And upright rows, 5x5. So this is an upper body day that has all of the markings of high exercise selection, maybe too high, and unmanaged volume, where it looks like you're just trying to throw as many sets and reps as possible towards the small muscle groups, potentially because you're not working them on Mondays, and you just need to balance the program better. You need to take some of those movements and put them on Monday, because this is too much. This is like an arm day, but poorly crafted. And I know that you have the weekend to recover afterwards, and that you might be suffering from a lot of DOMs, and you need to be fresh for the Monday. That's also an upper, but keep in mind, if you moved some of that to Monday, you wouldn't have to struggle so much to recover for it. So that's something to keep in mind. And for the rep ranges, again, I recommend lowering the sets and just focusing on evolving rep ranges for the most part. And you also do upright rows in a 5x5, which that's again a lot of shoulders. You do a lot of shoulder work, but if it works for you, it works for you. I would recommend isolating the arms a little bit more. The calves also don't get a lot of work, and I understand why. It's because you only do a lower body once a week, and for someone at your age, I get it completely, because you need time for the lower back to recover. Keep in mind that if you modify the exercise selection, the lower back wouldn't have to recover from so much. And I see in the notes that on Wednesdays you rotate. 1 week you do squats and the other week you do deadlifts. And that's great. I would say that deadlifts 5x5 is really not a good idea. 1 set of 5, 3 sets of 3, these are much better. 5x5 is, in my opinion, for most people, too much volume on the deadlift. You really don't need that much volume. And the more you age, the more, again, as I said, you will sort of find out that you need to reduce that volume. So I recommend you do that on this potential day, and you could even make the Friday into a mixed day. You don't need to have it an upper lower. You could train your calves again on Friday. You could do some very light hip hinge, not even knee flexion, just a hip hinge, like an hyperextension, for example, just to get more work in than just once a week. And the best would be to find a combo of a light hip hinge and a light knee flexion. So for example, very light lunges, if your knees can take them, very light post squats, superset it with a very light Romanian deadlift or hyperextension, just to have like a semblance of a second lower body day, and still focus on the upper body on that day. And the good thing is that since you're going to cut down a lot of the upper body work, you will have place. So for the Friday, I would have you do an overhead press, followed by the side laterals, superseded by the tricep extensions, and then cable curls, superseded by the upright rows. The hammer curls can be sent to Monday. They belong on Monday. And that will also mean that on Monday, you would most likely do something like the incline bench press, followed by the chins, followed by the dips, superseded by the curls. That way, you also create a space between the two strength work, the incline bench and the dips, that work similar muscles, so you'll be freshest and you'll perform better. And that is going to balance the program much more. Plus, you don't really train your traps, you don't really train your calves, so your abs, in isolation. So that will also give you a chance to put some of those movements in there. But overall, as you've seen, I'm humbled by your ability at this age to continue to train heavy with compound movements, and I want to give you a chance to continue. So I do think that the changes that I told you to apply will help you on the path of longevity and will help you to keep lifting for as long as possible. So I'm going to leave you with that, Claudio, and anyone who's watched the video. I appreciate it, and I just want to go back on one thing, but you said that as for frequency, this is all that you can handle. As you've noticed, I didn't really touch your frequency. I modified it slightly, but you're just training 3 days a week. I didn't add a day, and you will find that with the way I reorganized your frequency, you should recover better. So that's going to be that for me. Thank you for watching this program review. Have a good day.